Hi there, welcome back to another Touchdesigner tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at creating this diamond texture. We'll also briefly show how to make this shape, but as I mentioned in the title, this will also work for a logo. If I just stop the spinning, you can see here we can create a 3D extruded logo from an image. We can even actually make it 3D like that. But yeah, this file as is with all this effects is available for download through my Patreon below. This should hopefully be a bit of a more beginner tutorial today, so do leave some feedback if it was too fast, too slow, if you want something more complicated, or if this level is perfect for you. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to keep this node up here for reference, just disabling the render, hiding the background, and starting from scratch. So I'm going to firstly initialize the diamond shape or the logo. So if you have a logo, you can drag and drop that into Touchdesigner like so. I'm just going to use the default banana like this. Then essentially what we want to do is convert this to a 3D object. So the way we do that is I'm going to connect this to a null because I'm going to add some more effects. And then I can right click here and then go sop and then trace, which is going to trace the object into a 3D space, but currently is a 2D object. Now, if we want to create a diamond instead, we're going to use an object called a super quad, which is basically just a very morphable shape. We want to set it from mesh to polygon so we can get sort of the extrapolate the shapes later, and then here it's basically just playing around. So I think like you can turn the rows right down, for example. Maybe you want to stretch the radius in like that, or stretch it up like that. Increase the columns, but we might come back to this later once we've divided it. And then you can also, if we just change the angle like that, you can see these XY components here can like pull and push the warping like so, and then same for the Z axes, but we might just leave that one for now. Feel free to copy these numbers, and I'm pretty happy with that shape. Maybe a little bit less on the XY component. But yeah, that looks pretty awesome. So we have our two objects. Obviously this one is flat, but we will address that later. Next, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the scale is the same on them. I think we're actually in luck in this case. When I dragged my logo in earlier up here, it was significantly smaller than this. You can see this is scaled exactly to 1:1. This one's also quite small, so I might connect this to a transform. And I'm just going to turn that scale up until the banana roughly meets the outer edges of the one, just so we know that these two objects here are basically of the same scale. All right, so the next few things that we want to do is we want to divide and then create a wire. So I'm just going to plug those both in real quick. So we want to get a divide, which is basically going to allow us to splice up the object. We're going to want to get a wire frame, which is basically going to draw edges on it like so. And then if we're using a 2D object, then you want to include between the divide and the wire, you right click, go insert, and include an extrude. Click this plus button, sort of rotate it on its side. It won't actually rotate the object, so it just helps us see the extrusion. Then we can click values, and then we can drag the step scale slider right down until you're happy with sort of the thickness. Now, if I plug my diamond into here, you'll see that the extrusion is completely unnecessary. So you can either create two different paths or just follow it, get rid of the extrusion. You won't need the transform for that diamond either. You can probably just go straight into the divide, skip the extrusion. I will keep it as the banana for now, just so that way it's probably the more difficult one to do, so it makes more sense. And before we actually divide it up, let's go ahead and do our rendering. So we want to connect this wire to a null, just as good practice. it's often good to endure network chains in a null, so that way you can, if you want to add something to the end of your chain, you can insert it between these two, and then you don't have to create a new send. Your nulls will always be your sends. In this case, we can right click here, go geometry under the comp tab. We want to grab a camera and then an environment light. The reason we're doing an environment light is because we want to essentially create a chrome texture to get sort of a glassy diamond look. Let's define this environment light. So I'm going to go movie file in, click plus. If you've followed my tutorials, grab this cloudy ocean. Followed my tutorials before, this will all be quite similar and stuff you're used to. Going to connect in a monochrome and a level. Not super necessary, but it will just be helpful if you want to fine tune your environment light. And then a null as well, and then drag the null onto the environment and click environment map. Then finally we can grab a render top, and this will automatically configure for you. I'm going to manually just set everything right now, like so. And then I'm also going to go to the materials tab and get a PBR, and then throw that onto the geometry. The PBR is really good for just creating a very quick texture, a simple one. In this case, I'm just going to drag the roughness down, and you can see here, dragging that roughness down, it immediately starts to reflect all the light, which is this environment light. You can see I can turn off the monochrome and it goes back to that shape. Cool. Let's go ahead and connect in a RGB key, which will set the background to black from the render, and then also a null, and then I'm going to set that as my background. I'm also going to scale up my resolution to 1080p, and that's sort of really up to you. You'll be limited on your resolution based on which version of Touchdesigner you have. Cool. So now we sort of want to create some little subdivisions. So what I'm going to do is on this divide is I'm going to convex polygons, and you can already see that we're getting these fractals like so. It's really up to you how you want to define this look. I'm just going to keep mine around 100. Keep the extrude on. Here in the wire, I want to now bring the radius of that right down to something like 0.1. Again, we will continue to adjust all of these things as we go on and add more layers. So maybe I want to go for something like that with like a maximum edge is quite low, and then I can even like bring that down a little bit more. Yeah, so far so good. So the next thing we want to do is similar to my glass tutorial, is we basically want to create some glass, add some bloom, and then some rough texturing, which will give us that diamond look. What is the best way to do that? Let's do this first. So what we want to do is bring this RGB key and null off to the side, as we're going to be inserting between them. Then let's connect this render to an edge. You want to edge it nice and good. Then we want to connect in a displace like that. Then I'm going to also grab a slope and put that here. So essentially we want to plug the second one in there, but I'm first going to plug it into the slope and then plug the slope into the displace. And you can already see that we're getting a very glassy look by displacing it with itself, which is quite good. The slope here is just going to give us a little bit more finer control over this glassy look. You can see that when we turn it all the way off, it does no displacement, versus all the way up, it does a lot of displacement. Again, we're just creating sort of tools that we can come back to and then fine tune the look of once we're happy with it. You can also play with the actual displacements as well. Didn't mean to scroll that one, but like the displace weight, for example, you can bring down. Again, we will play with this later on some more. From the palette, I'm going to grab a bloom, just to grab a little bit of a glow. So connects those two in. I'm going to take the ramp all the way off, set the glow color to like pretty much white. And then from here, you know, maybe bring the threshold down a little bit. Maybe also bring the intensity down. I might leave it like that. Cool. So in terms of where we're at, we've pretty much got like the 80% done, you know, where it's like you can do 80% of the work very quickly, and then it's the rest of the 20% that gives it the finishing sort of final touches. But if this is what you're happy with, then feel free to start branching off from here and creating such. I'm going to add a little bit more nodes, which are all very fine textures, and then I'm also going to animate some of the movement. So I want to speak to the animation first. So you can see when we say if I connect in a noise all the way back at the start of the chain, it has this flow-on effect. Like if you're not familiar with Touchdesigner, it flows right on from the beginning all the way to the end. So if we actually create a little bit of animation in this movie file, then that will translate throughout the whole project. So the way we're going to do that is I'm going to keep this noise connected in, and I'm going to change the output to just noise. Then I'm going to connect in a composite here and bring my original logo into that. And then you can see here, if I press play, and then on the transform tab, I'm going to, you know what, let's make this for 4D noise, and then on the translate 4D, I'm going to type in ABS capital T time dot seconds, and then times that by 0.1 just to slow it down a bit. You see we're creating some animation. Maybe the 0.1 is actually too slow. Maybe we remove the 0.1. Maybe that's too fast. It's really up to you. I'm going to make the period, let's say, something really high. Bring the amplitude down a little bit so it's not as crazy. And you can sort of just play with this and create sort of whatever look you want. Maybe you want to go super crunchy, create this like morphed effect. Maybe you want to have it come in and out like so. Maybe you want to turn the exponent and everything super down so it doesn't actually disappear from view. Bring the offset up maybe. It's really up to you. Essentially, I'm just wanting to create a little bit of change throughout the objects, so that way it's not static like that and it has just some flickering elements to it. If you're using the the diamond here, and we'll simply be able to just rotate the diamond, which I will show you here. So under the geometry, on the rotate XY axis, so the middle column here, you can also click rotate and see the Y. We can type in ABS time dot seconds once again. Rotations are done on a 360-degree angle, so we want to multiply this by like 10. And yeah, you can see that if we had our diamond plugged in like so, we already get that sort of like really nice crystal movement. Some things you might want to try here is, one, disabling the displacement if you prefer a much cleaner look. I quite like very rough edges, so I always gravitate towards these rougher looks. You can also just play with the slope like so. You might want to also play with bringing the wire size up to create something more solid like that. And then same with the divide. You might want to completely turn off the divide or bring the edges up or down, really depending on what kind of look you are after. So the next thing we're going to do is add in some more texturing. So between the bloom and the RGB key, let's go ahead and add in a bit of a blur. So I'm going to insert a Luma blur. Luma blur basically takes in a white and black value and then blurs the image based on those. So if we create a noise, plug in our diamond here, set the output to just noise, that way we've got the resolution set. Then if I make this period very high, like 5, and then also, you know, throw in some animation, ABS time.seconds. That's really fast. Let's slow it down, times 0.1. Awesome. Now if we plug this into our Luma blur, you can see there's the white filter width is going to blur everything. So here, this part of the image is black, so it's not being blurred. You might want to inverse this, so do that. But this is essentially just creating some random blur and depth to the object. If you want to make it not as strong, obviously you can bring the blurs down from here, but you can also play with the shape of the noise as well to create different kinds of blurred looks. I am pretty happy with a very subtle amount of blur, which I think like that's quite nice. You can see when I toggle that on and off, it just gives a nice little depth of focus. It's a little bit random. You can also do this by using a depth if you would like, but I quite like this effect of having it in and out of random focus, like so. The next thing we want to do is another displace, like so, and then a slope. Now you can either create a new noise here or use the same noise that we've just done, like so. I'm going to use the same one because I'm lazy. And you can see here we get, actually, you know what? I'm going to create a new noise here just because this one might be a little bit confusing. So I'm going to disconnect that noise, plug in the Luma blur like that. Once again, set the output to just noise. So you can see here we're creating essentially, I want to set this to mirror as well. A little like stained glass look. So if I go noise and bring this all the way down and then bring the strength down, you can see we've got this sort of like privacy glass sort of look. This is obviously optional. Again, if you don't like this rough look, then you might not want to use this at all. But I'm going to add this in and then just scale it right down to a point where I quite like. I might even play with the noise, for example, bring the amplitude of the noise down, or bring the exponent down, the amplitude up, offset down maybe. You can also animate this again if that is something you want to add a little bit more dimension to the texture. I'm going to maybe even bring the displace weight itself down to 0.1. It's really up to you. We're just creating a little bit more of a rough sort of edge. Even that Luma blur might want to bring that down a little bit. Yeah. Okay, I'm liking the look of this. Look at this so far. And then a final bit of texturing I have going on is just adding a noise filter to the object, which is completely optional, but you can see here that we've pretty much got the same look. If you want to create that noise, you just very quickly add another noise, one of the best operators in Touchdesigner, insert a level, insert a composite, drag your RGB key into that, set that to screen, go to your noise output to just noise, make it very small for the TV static look, level, post, opacity right down to about there, just figure it out. Transform once again for more texture, type in the ABS time.seconds times whatever you want, 0.4. I've mistyped something, need a capital T. And yeah, you can really see that we're comparing the original one to the one on the right, that everything's coming together. This just, in any of the displaces, if you bring the UV weight up, it'll create that sort of dispersed look. You can see we have a bit more Luma blur going on the right, or a bit more of that displacement going on. Maybe I can bring this displace up like that, create a really intricate kind of look like that. But that is pretty much it. And then if I plug the banana in, actually, I'm really curious what the hell is going on with that. There we go. Banana looks pretty alright, if I do say so myself. But yeah, so I hope this tutorial has been useful, but I hope more importantly that you've picked up on some of the more common practices that we do in Touchdesigner. today I was creating this logo, like diamond effect, for a commission, and I sort of like realized how many like slopes and noises and all of that I was using constantly throughout, just to get from this look here to this look. And it's really just a lot of repeated techniques that I constantly use, at least for my designs in Touchdesigner, to create very simple stuff. And once you have those down, creating something like this from scratch from your imagination should be a very quick process. So I hope this was useful. Continue to experiment, play around with this however you like. Feel free to duplicate any of these individual sections here into your own projects and see how they turn out for you. But other than that, I'm going to upload this file to my Patreon and post this video, and I appreciate you watching. Let's catch you on the next one. See y'all.